Greetings. This is Serving Camps. I'm Steve.
And I'm Angie. And this is the blessing that we have been given to live in while we serve at camps.
Okay, folks, we're here at Camp Grace in North Carolina, and we are going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the backstory about how we went ahead and started this travel situation that we are wonderfully blessed with. And as Angie pointed out in the previous episodes, God had allowed us to search for a pickup truck because we initially thought we were going to be traveling with pickup truck and trailer. And so I guess the best way of wording it is he allowed us to have in Rapid City an all-city car sale where all the dealerships at that time in 2013 came together at the Civic Center, and they brought everything together. So it was over a weekend, and I looked at Angie and I knew that this was not a decision that I was supposed to make by myself. And definitely, I mean, guys out there, if you're wise at all and you have a spouse, your spouse needs to have probably over 50% of the decision. We just kind of say yes. And so, getting back to that, I asked her if she would feel comfortable with coming out to the all-city car sale and sitting in the three major Ford, Chevy, Dodge pickup trucks. We had already basically discussed really the size of what it needed to be and some of the features that it needed to have in order to pull our future house. One of the reasons why I asked Angie to come with is the passenger seat or the driver's seat needed to be comfortable.
Not just comfortable, it had to have a headrest that wasn't facing downward like this, which, you know, a lot of them are facing into your head nowadays, and I had to have one that was flat because I have had a history of neck and back issues, and so it wasn't just that it had to be comfortable, it had to be comfortable on long distances because, when we travel, it's many days at a time to get to where we're going to sometimes.
Yeah, long distances.
Yep.
So we sat in both a Dodge, well, not both, but in a Dodge, a Chevy, and a Ford pickup. And God had amazingly, which he always does, had a beautiful blue
my favorite color
F-350 crew cab, duals, diesel, everything that we were looking for as far as pulling power. And there were, as Angie said, more bells and whistles on it than we thought of necessarily.
Yeah, it was amazing.
So we figured that it probably wouldn't be the one, but at least we were going to give it a shot. So we went home. I sat down with the computer on their website and figured out what price they might possibly be asking for it, and wrote down a price that was what we thought well below that we would have to probably negotiate back and forth with. And the next day, which was Sunday, went, and the salesperson found us and looked at me and said, did you mention that you worked for Federal Express? And I said, yeah. He said, well, there was another couple that came in yesterday that they also said they worked for Federal Express and that you guys had a program. Are you still interested in the pickup? And I said, yeah, but knowing all the budget cuts and everything, I didn't think that we still had some sort of deal with anybody necessarily. And so he brought us into the trailer that they had on site, sat us down at a table, said, let me come back in about 5-10 minutes. It was about 10 minutes later. Angie and I were kind of wondering how soon we would be going home without anything, and he put down a piece of paper, and the piece of paper said,
well under what Steve had written down on his piece of paper.
yes.
So much so that it was like $10,000 under what Steve had written down.
So we looked at it, and we looked at it, and we looked at each other, and said, well, this is kind of a no-brainer. God is kind of sitting back saying, yeah, this door is open. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah,
So
that was the first step.
We went ahead and purchased it, and that was our pickup. Well, working for Federal Express and having coworkers throughout the area, I had discussed with several of the coworkers what our desires and plans were for our future as far as living and traveling. And the coworker that went to Spearfish also delivered to Whitewood, and there's a RV dealership there, and he came back to me and said that he had seen a fifth wheel that had much of everything that we were looking for.
The make and model were the same as what Steve had figured out that we should have.
And it had been sitting there for quite some time that he can remember. So one of the following weeks, we went to the dealership, took a look at the 2009 Mobile Suite, and really, really looked at it, talked to the dealer, went home, did the same thing, figured out what was needing to be changed or fixed.
Or added.
Yep. And wrote down a price. And wrote down the things that we wanted to have added to it. And figured, well, we'll give it to them, and we'll see if they ever call back.
Yeah, and some of those additions were, the actual fifth wheel hitch, a washer dryer, combo unit, some things that we would need for, I think there were chocks and
some big things, like she said, the hitch. Some little things, like she said, the wheel chocks and stuff like that. Yep. And when they came back to us, the little things, there were some little things that they said no, but that the dealership had talked and agreed with the owners, being that it sat on the property for a year and a half under consignment. And they said, yes, we're good with it. So we had the pickup, we had the fifth wheel, and then, as Angie will explain, the next thing we had to do was figure out where we were going to be for the next few periods of time, because we both still worked full time.
Yep. Well, and the other thing is it didn't happen right away between the truck and the fifth wheel. There was a span of probably 4 or 5 months before we found the fifth wheel. Steve was, very specific in what he was telling his coworkers as far as the make and model, so that they could keep an eye out. And that's something you should do as far as if you're feeling that God is leading you into camp ministry and you're needing a vehicle and you kind of have done your research, and let your friends and family know, because somebody might see something along the way, and it's just another connection that God's trying to make so that you get to what he has planned for you. So after we had purchased the fifth wheel, we had put it into storage, because it was literally December 31st of 2013 when we signed the papers on the fifth wheel, and our lease was up April 1st. So we had 3 months to get it ready, 3 months to continue to downsize, because yes, there was more downsizing to do. And also, if we couldn't downsize enough, then what do? Steve?
Well, yeah, with the apartment that we had, it was a one-stall garage sort of thing, and I still had a lot of tools that I had brought over with me, and quite a bit of, well, just a lot of other stuff, not necessarily bulky stuff, and so we had moved from Minneapolis to Rapid City in a 6x10 enclosed trailer that once we moved into the apartment, I didn't think that we ever needed anymore. So God led me to a military person on a base near Rapid City who needed an enclosed trailer for moving his family places. So he bought it. Well, I should have kept it. But I didn't think. So I bought another one. And that other one became our small garage while we traveled the first couple years for storage purposes.
Yep. One of the projects of downsizing that we didn't complete was the scanning of the photos. So we still had several bins that were put in the enclosed trailers so that we could continue to do that because it was an ongoing project. But once we had everything, like Steve said, we were still working full-time. We still had our jobs, and we were waiting on God to tell us when. When do we start this ministry? And, while you're waiting, you still have to do something. Well, we didn't want to pay rent on the apartment while we had this fifth wheel that we could live in. And we also wanted to make sure we could live in it. So we were very fortunate in finding out about Heart Ranch, and at the time that we went down there and took the tour, and we were told that there was another family that was selling their membership, and it was really reasonably priced. So reasonably priced that we grabbed it real quick. Another God thing, because he knew that we would need some place to put the fifth wheel to live in. And so we lived at Heart Ranch for a year and a half for $5 a day.
Yep.
Because we had that membership. It was another blessing that he had provided for us.
We had another option. The other option was Cedar Canyon Camp, which was just west of Rapid City. I could have continued to volunteer there and been there, but the road leading up to it during the winter oftentimes got closed. And like Angie said, we both were full-time, whereas the road leading down to Heart Ranch was a major highway, and we both figured that would be the safest route, sort of thing. So God allows you to have many options, and he tends to point you in the ones that he best desires you to be. So we were at Heart Ranch for a little over a year and a half while we waited to find out what his next move was for us, and that will come in another episode, sort of thing. But the fifth wheel, as you can see in different pictures that we've been showing in our conversation, was very, very well built and was good for us during the time that we were at Heart Ranch, where we did not have to move for long periods of time. But there are a couple pictures that we're going to show you where the slides are in, and that is one thing. If you are looking at being full-time and traveling, that, as we'll say in different episodes, you need to take a look at the vehicle that you're in, whether it's a motorhome, fifth wheel, or travel trailer, that when the slides come in, you are still able to use the trailer, the RV. In our case, the hard part about it was when the slides were in, we did not have access to the bedroom or the bathroom or the kitchen or the living room. We had to have at least one slide out to go out for the bathroom and the bedroom. And so, yeah,
Actually, we had to have two because
Yeah.
we couldn't get from through the kitchen to the
well,
back end.
so the idea behind that was God provided us when we were at Heart Ranch with the correct vehicle that we needed for there, but he also told us when to change. But those are later episodes, and
Yeah.
we will continue to let you know.
Well, and this is also to show you that that was our first experience at being full-time. We didn't know a lot about what we would need to be full-time, because we had just done RVing as a weekend thing in Steve's 27-foot Nuwa, which was a small Class C, and had no idea how the RV should be laid out, what the pitfalls were of this particular floor plan versus another, things we liked, things we didn't like, until we had actually lived in one. So, we made some mistakes, but it was also a huge learning thing for us. And
it's a huge learning thing, because in 300 or 400 square feet, you learn whether or not you can love and live and survive together in that small space.
without all your possessions.
Well, that's another story.
Yeah.
But it's a good learning time.
It's a wonderful journey
So
that God has us on, and that's part of the reason that we're sharing it with you, is so that maybe you learn some things from us before you start your ministry of serving camps. So give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel so that you get notified when we drop a new one, and share us with your friends, because there's somebody out there that God wants to do this ministry, because that's why we're doing this channel. Thanks.
absolutely. Thank you.